What if I told you that the love you believe in was never real? That what you call connection might just be control wearing perfume? Sometimes, people don't reject the truth because it's wrong. They reject it because it threatens the stories they built to feel safe. We were told that love would save us, that it would be pure, unconditional healing, that one day, someone would walk into our lives and finally make us whole. That idea didn't come from nowhere. It was planted early. In childhood, in fairy tales, in the music that made your teenage heart ache, a promise was whispered into your subconscious. One day, the right person will make everything okay. You believed it, not because you were foolish, but because you were human. No one ever handed you the tools to see through that illusion. But what if that promise was never meant to be kept? What if love, as we've been taught to chase it, isn't redemption, but design? What if nature, not as a poet, but as a philosopher, saw it all along? Nature doesn't deal in comfort. It doesn't tell fairy tales. It cuts through them, like a scalpel slicing through sentiment, revealing the raw patterns underneath. When it looked at love, it didn't see something divine. It saw something strategic. And that's where the real discomfort begins, because most of us, especially men, still aren't ready to hear that. Here's the truth: you don't love her. You love the version of yourself reflected in her eyes. You love how she validates you, how her presence whispers, "You're enough." But validation isn't love. And what we often call love is a well-crafted illusion that keeps us emotionally obedient. Women, for centuries, have lived in a world that demanded silence from them. They weren't given weapons, so they learned to master subtler ones: attention, emotion, influence. Not because they were manipulative, but because they had to survive. When men rule through power, women rule through perception. But here's where modern men still stumble. You confuse strategy for softness. You mistake adaptability for innocence. You think she's fragile, that her love is unconditional, that her gentleness is purity. It isn't. It's power refined. It's precision born of generations who couldn't fight with fists, so they fought with intuition. While you pour out your emotions, calling it vulnerability, she's quietly listening, decoding, understanding where your weaknesses live. Not to harm you, but to navigate a system that's always been tilted against her. While you dream of soulmates, she's calculating balance between closeness and control, affection and autonomy. It's not cruelty. It's instinct. Because long ago, she learned a silent rule. The one who sees the game, but never speaks of it, wins. And what about you? You were raised on ideals, the pedestal, the muse, the healer. You don't see her as she is. You see the role you need her to play. Nietzsche, the philosopher so many quote but so few actually read, didn't expose these illusions to attack women. He did it to shatter the stories men tell themselves about women. As long as you believe she is morally superior, as long as you believe her love is selfless, you'll keep surrendering your agency for the comfort of her approval. And she'll accept that power, not out of hatred, but because the world taught her to. You're not being loved. You're being managed. And the scariest part? You like it that way. You crave the anesthesia of affection, the feeling that someone else holds the answer to your pain. Because if she's your redemption, you never have to face what's beneath your need. That's what truly terrifies you. Not heartbreak, but yourself. Fear doesn't always show up as panic. Sometimes, it wears the mask of devotion. You say you love her unconditionally, but look deeper. What you're offering isn't love. It's bargaining. You're saying, if I give you my heart, will you fix the parts of me I can't bear to face? You're not looking for a partner. You're looking for a cure. And while you offer your soul, hoping for salvation, she's quietly mapping your patterns. Not out of malice, but survival. Every time you reveal your wounds, she learns how to navigate them, how to stay essential in your emotional landscape. Nature saw this too. He saw that love, as practiced by humans, often becomes a subtle power game. Who yields first? Who withholds affection longer? Who controls the rhythm of connection? Those are not questions of love. They're questions of control. Here's an uncomfortable truth. The one who needs less always holds more power. You give her everything: time, attention, identity, and call it honesty. She gives just enough to keep you reaching, and calls it connection. But it's not connection. It's choreography. We built a culture that teaches women to lead through suggestion, and men to surrender, while believing they're in charge. It's not her fault. It's not yours. It's conditioning. Centuries of it. Men rule the external world. Women master the internal one. Now, in modern love, those two domains collide. And you, both of you, walk straight into that collision, smiling. She doesn't argue. She implies. She doesn't demand. She desires. And with that, she shapes you, your choices, your identity, without ever needing to raise her voice. That's not manipulation. That's mastery. You call her mysterious, but mystery is just clarity you haven't earned yet. You don't understand her, because you've never questioned your own myths. You still believe love is about unity. She knows love is about leverage. And when she pulls away, it feels like your world collapses. Not because she's gone, but because your reflection left with her. Nietzsche would say, "You never loved her. You loved the way she made you feel about yourself. She wasn't your salvation. She was the stage where you performed your worth. And when that stage disappeared, you mistook silence for betrayal. She didn't deceive you. She just stopped acting in the story you wrote. You didn't love her. You loved the illusion she carried for you. And when she dropped it, when she stopped reflecting your fantasy, you called her cold, cruel, unloving. But maybe the real betrayal was yours. You expected her to keep playing a part that kept you safe." Nietzsche didn't condemn women. He condemned men who refused to grow up, men who wanted muses, not mirrors, angels, not equals. If you're ready to stop blaming her, you're ready to finally look at yourself. Not with guilt, not with self-pity, but with clarity. And from that clarity, something new can emerge. Not the end of love, but its transformation. You were told that love is the highest virtue, that to love selflessly is what makes a man good. But what if that selflessness isn't noble at all? What if it's just another disguise for emotional dependency? Behind every grand romantic gesture, every sacrifice, every "I'd do anything for you," hides a quiet fear whispering, "If I don't give everything, she'll leave." So you keep giving. You compromise, you bend, you erase edges of yourself just to fit the shape of what you think she wants. Not because you love her unconditionally, but because you fear being without her. That's not bravery. That's submission dressed up as devotion. And while you call it love, she feels something different: control. Not the kind that dominates through strength, but the kind that rules through gravity, through the quiet certainty that you orbit around her validation. Because here's what Nietzsche hinted at, though most people never understood it: love that grows from need can never be equal. She may not demand you to change, but you will, willingly, unconsciously. She may not ask for your obedience, but you'll hand it over anyway. Because somewhere deep down, you've convinced yourself her approval is the gateway to your worth. But she never asked to be your savior. She was just being herself. You turned her into your mirror, and then mistook the reflection for the real thing. And when that mirror cracked, it wasn't just heartbreak you felt. It was collapse. Because what you were protecting all along wasn't her. It was the story. The story that says, "If she loves me, I'm whole. If she stays, I matter." But stories aren't truth. They're survival mechanisms for people who haven't learned to face themselves. And when reality intrudes, you call it betrayal. Nietzsche would call it awakening. Because the lie was never that she had power. The lie was that you didn't see it. You called her gentle, but she was observant. You called her nurturing, but she was strategic. You thought she surrendered, but she was choosing. Always choosing. Because she understood a truth you didn't. The one who sees the dynamic clearly holds the power to shape it. And that's where the illusion begins to crack. You remember her smile. Soft, reassuring, but behind it, something was always calculating. You remember how she could sense your moods before you even spoke. You thought that was magic. It wasn't. It was intuition sharpened by survival. For her, reading emotions isn't a hobby. It's armor. It's the way she's learned to stay one step ahead in a world that punishes direct power, but rewards subtle influence. This isn't about blame. It's about seeing clearly. You live in a culture that sells love as mutual surrender, but practices it as mutual leverage. Where vulnerability is marketed as a virtue, but quietly used as currency. You open up your wounds thinking it will bring you closer. She listens, and she learns. Not because she's malicious, but because every person learns how to navigate the ecosystem they're born into. And in modern love, emotion is economy. The moment you understand this, you're faced with a choice. You either evolve, or you collapse. Most people collapse. They run back to the myth. They say, this time, it'll be different, but it never is. Because the roles haven't changed, only the actors. You can swap faces, change names, move to new cities, even reinvent your type. But as long as you keep playing the same unconscious script, the giver and the redeemer, the worshiper and the muse, the ending never changes. You keep calling it fate, but it's just repetition. And until you stop needing her to perform the part, you'll never meet the person behind the mask. So what happens when the mask finally falls? When you stop chasing roles and start seeing reality, something remarkable and terrifying begins to happen. You start to see what's always been there. Not manipulation, but instinct. Not malice, but strategy shaped by necessity. A woman aware that society stripped her of external power, so she mastered the relational kind instead. Not to control you, but to survive, to be seen, to have agency in a world that rarely grants it openly. So the question isn't, is she ready to love me? The real question is, am I ready to see her, without the myth, without the projection? Because when you do, something shifts. For the first time, you don't see a goddess or a savior. You see a human being, just as complex, flawed, brilliant, and afraid as you are. And that's when love, real love, becomes possible. Not as dependency, but as recognition. Not as fantasy, but as freedom. Because true love isn't finding someone who completes you. It's standing next to someone who doesn't need to, and still choosing each other, consciously, every day. That kind of love demands maturity. Not the maturity to endure pain, but the maturity to face truth. The truth that your partner will never fix your wounds. The truth that your worth isn't negotiable. The truth that love isn't about completing each other. It's about confronting yourself through each other. And when that truth finally lands, something inside you calms. The desperation fades. The chase ends. You stop reaching for approval. You stop mistaking comfort for connection. You stop offering your soul as payment for validation. Instead, you begin to build something new, not out of need, but out of clarity. You realize she isn't your missing piece. She's a mirror showing you the parts you ignored. And maybe, for the first time, you can thank her for that. Because every heartbreak, every illusion shattered, every she changed moment, they weren't punishments. They were invitations. Invitations to wake up. To see love, not as rescue, but as revelation. Not as perfection, but as practice. Not as fairy tale, but as truth. So stop searching for the one. Start searching for the truth about yourself, about your patterns, about your fears. Because until you do, every love story will just be the same dream, recycled with a different face. Nietzsche wasn't anti-love. He was anti-illusion. He knew that real connection begins only after the fantasy burns away. And maybe that's the transformation we're all secretly craving. Not the death of romance, but the rebirth of honesty. To look at someone and say, I don't need you to complete me. I want to walk beside you, as equals, as mirrors, as humans. That's not weakness. That's evolution. And if you felt a shift while hearing this, if something in you stirred, even uncomfortably, it means you're ready. Ready to stop performing love. Ready to start living it. Because love, stripped of illusion, isn't a story of rescue. It's a revolution of awareness. So if this message made you pause, made you rethink, made you see differently, share it, not because it flatters your ego, but because truth multiplies when it's spoken aloud. Like this. Comment if it challenged you. And subscribe, not for entertainment, but because you're done living under myths. You're ready to wake up, to see clearly, to love without the story, to be without the mask. And that is where everything truly begins.